Hello, this is Mr. Jarrett, and in this video tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make a gradient background for your work in Adobe Illustrator. So I have a student's project here. He did the painting with text project. You can see he didn't necessarily fill in all of the detail that we talked about, and he only has one color. So hopefully you have a lot more detail than this, and you have more than just one color. So the directions that I have written for creating a background show that you need to lock your layers. So you can see over here in my layers panel, I have his design, I have his original image, which is currently turned off. And it says to lock your layers. It says to make a new layer and to drag that layer to the bottom of the panel. Basically, you're putting it in the background. Okay. Then it says to get the rectangle tool. So on your tool panel, find the one that looks like a rectangle, or it might look like one of these other shapes if you were using one of those last. But you just click and hold until you find the rectangle. And then I'm going to create a rectangle behind all this, but I'm going to give myself a little bit of a border. So you can see I have about 1/4 of an inch here, probably about 1/4 of an inch here. So I'm going to start this about 1/4 of an inch down, something like about here. Okay, and I'm just going to click and hold and drag up until I have that nice border the whole way around. I'm going to let go. And depending on what color you are using last, it instantly puts that as your fill color. So we don't want a plain solid color as our background. I'm going to create a gradient to add a little bit more of a dynamic effect. So you can go up to the Windows panel and move down here and see if gradient has a check next to it. If it doesn't, then that means you don't have it open. But if it does, then it's open over here. So you can see normally it's on the same panel as your strokes. So I'm going to select gradient. And there are 3 different types of gradients. There's the linear gradient, which is a straight transition of color. You can see in this picture it goes from white to grayish to black. And you can make that go from left to right, top to bottom, on an angle, but this is a straight transition. Then there's the radial gradient. So this is a gradient in a circle or a radius. It has a center point and it kind of blends out from that center point. And then there's this freeform gradient, which I think is a lot cooler. And for this project, it is going to give us a really nice background. So I'm going to select the freeform gradient. But again, you can experiment with any of these. But when you select the freeform gradient, your computer has to process a little bit. It tries to sample all of the colors that you have in your picture. And in this case, since the student only had one color, it gave me only one color, and it gave me 3 other dots of white. So these dots themselves have a blending effect of color as they come out, and you can move these around just by clicking and holding on them. You can scale them up or down by stretching this little circle. You can edit their color. So the gradient right now is the same color as this. We probably want a complementary color. So if you double click on this, you can get a complementary color. So this is kind of like a orangish yellow. I don't know what your screen looks like, but that's what it is on mine. So probably the opposite color here would be something around like the bluish shade. Okay, so you can see I just created like a blue background. Maybe I want to add a little bit of a different effect up here with maybe a darker blue. Maybe down here where his name is, I want it to be black so it stands out. Maybe I'll drag this over. Okay. Where his face is, maybe I'll make that bright white so it's almost like a spotlight on him. And if I wanted to add another one, I simply just click. Okay, and it adds one. If I want to delete that, I just hit delete. Okay, so it's pretty easy to use this. I'm going to add one more color here just for some more dramatic effect because it's only black and white and blue. Let's throw in some wild color like a bright red that might give it a little bit more of that dynamic look I was talking about. Cool. So you can continue to adjust these as much as you want. You can change the colors up, move them around, whatever. But this is how you're going to make a gradient background for your project.